Thank you for the introduction, Anusha. As you can all see, I'm joining from a tropical island. No, not really. I'm joining from a cold home office in Finland, but I'm originally from the Netherlands. Yeah, indeed, I'm here to talk about how tinnitus patients can take charge of their journey and influence research and all of these things. I am coming indeed at this from quite a personal perspective, in the sense that the reason I got involved in all of this, and I became one of the managers of the Tinnitus Talk online community and Tinnitus Hub, which is the nonprofit entity that we created, that all our online community activities and research activities fall under. The reason I got involved in all of that is indeed because I developed tinnitus in 2018. I think looking back, I probably had it already before, but very mildly. I do recall often thinking there must be a mosquito in the room when it was winter, so I knew there couldn't be a mosquito. In retrospect, that was probably tinnitus, but something happened in 2018, and I'm not sure what, where it suddenly became very loud and intrusive. And yeah, it was a very disconcerting experience, and led to me not being able to work for a few months, which I'd never really experienced before in my life. When you're in that situation, it's very hard to see how you can learn to live with it, as everyone is telling you to do. Learn to live with it. It's obviously not that easy. As you probably all know, tinnitus comes in many forms, and some people they're like, yeah, you're tinnitus, I'm fine with it, it's never bothered me. Other people are extremely bothered. It's a very unique and personal experience. It's very hard to sort of describe to others. And yeah, I certainly struggled a lot in the first few months. In the first week, I signed up to Tinnitus Talk. So that's the online community or forum, whatever you want to call it, that Tinnitus Hub runs. And what I found very helpful is there's a section on success stories there. So I was reading a lot of those because, people were telling stories, people who had already, struggled for years sometimes, or had long experience with tinnitus, were telling stories of sort of how they got better, how they learned to cope. And that was really helpful for me, because it's hard to, when you're in that dire situation, it's kind of hard to see a way out, but that certainly gave me hope. And then as I started volunteering for Tinnitus Hub, and I also became very interested in the research. So I'll also be talking a little bit today about, how tinnitus patients or sufferers can influence research, which I think is very important that we all try to do. I'm going to share my screen. So, all right. Okay, I'm assuming you can see my screen. I should probably put it on slideshow though, just a moment. Yeah, all right. Yeah, so support, inform, advocate, those are some of the things that we as Tinnitus Hub do, and I, hope to describe to you how I think that's relevant for people struggling with tinnitus, and what they can get out of the resources that we offer. So there's a few questions I want to discuss today, and they're kind of open questions because I don't really have the full answers, but these are really related to the three themes or areas that we as an organization cover. So, we offer peer-to-peer support, and I think a key question there is how or to what extent can tinnitus sufferers help each other? We offer information and educational materials, and I think a key question there is, which is really more a question for the audience here, what kinds of educational materials would help you, because we're looking to develop those. And we're focused on patient advocacy, and the question I'm posing there is, does hoping or advocating for a cure help you in, whatever situation you're in. Yeah, a few words about Tinnitus Hub. It is a nonprofit. It's global and online. We run an online community. We're non-commercial. We're run by volunteers such as myself. My day job is something completely different, as Anusha briefly mentioned. And we're grassroots, which means all of our strategies and initiatives are taken from the community. This is some screenshots from the Tinnitus Talk forum. So I feel like these days online forums have kind of a bad rep, and for good reason. I'm myself not a big fan of social media. I'm not on Facebook and these kinds of big social media platforms, and I believe they're not always necessarily good for us. And I think, you know, any online group or community has its pros and cons. So I certainly want to acknowledge some of the pitfalls of, you know, let's say engaging with others on the internet, which certainly, you know, does have its pitfalls. But I do think, you know, because tinnitus is such a condition where there's so little help available for people and so little information out there, that, you know, it's natural and normal for people to turn to online resources. And we are the biggest, as far as I know, biggest online community for people with tinnitus. And I do think it's a relatively good place to look for, you know, support and interaction with others. One thing I, you know, think we do really well, or relatively well, is to provide, you know, well-organized information and discussions. So if you join a Facebook group for tinnitus sufferers, it's just a never-ending stream of consciousness where people are spewing whatever. There's no structure or organization, and I find it very hard to see what you could get out of that as someone who's struggling with tinnitus. What we try to do, and, you know, with a small group of volunteer moderators, is provide structure. So, you know, if you don't want to see negative stuff, you can just go to the success stories part of the forum. If you just want to generally chat with others, go to the general chat section. If you want, you know, advice on a specific situation, you go to the support section. If you want to learn more about research, you go to research news, and under the treatment section, we have all the known treatments for tinnitus in separate threads, so you can join discussions with others who may have experience with those treatments. So I think that's really the added value of what we offer, is a more, yeah, organized environment. So the question, can we as tinnitus sufferers help each other? I would say, you know, I do think Tinnitus Talk and other online communities can be valuable. I think you just have to know how to use them and in what situation. So I think where it's really good for sharing stories with others who will understand, or are more likely to understand than those in your day-to-day life. Learn from others' experiences, find camaraderie, also just discuss about the science and the treatments, and get involved in any community initiatives that we might be organizing around research and advocacy. I would say don't use it if you're looking for like a definitive diagnosis or a solution to your specific situation, because I think it's very individual. And of course, if you're very easily triggered by negative stories, something to be careful of. And if you don't want to talk about tinnitus anymore and you feel like you're ready to move on, that would also be a reason not to take part in Tinnitus Talk. Although I would stress that we always really appreciate when people hang around, even if they've habituated and tinnitus is no longer a big problem for them. If they hang around to help others, that's of course really appreciated. So we've done some user feedback surveys, and we know that the vast majority of our users generally find the advice that they get from others on Tinnitus Talk helpful, and they find that it's a useful source of help and information. A minority also indicated sometimes the advice can be conflicting, and I think that's where you run into the problems, the, you know, inherent issues with any online community. Is just it's a lot of different people talking. You know, they're not all, they might be contradicting each other. They're not all necessarily experts. So take that with a grain of salt. But you know, our audience has expressed a need for more like, let's say, evidence-based and vetted objective resources. So that's what we want to work on, is have a website where you can engage within the online community, but we also have these resources that we provide that are vetted by experts, etc. So we already have some educational tools and materials. We have the Tinnitus Talk podcast, which has, I think, 21 episodes. A lot of them are research focused, but some of them are also more about, just people's personal experiences. So go and check that out if you don't know it already. We do also publish a lot of video interviews on our YouTube and Vimeo channels with researchers and other experts. But like I said, we're looking to develop, as part of the Tinnitus Talk website, these more evidence-based resources to offer to the community. And so the open question there is, what kinds of educational materials would you find helpful? And if you have any suggestions, please type them here in the chat or reach out to me later. This is just an example of like the kinds of research because we are working on stuff, and so one of the things we're working on is, okay, how do you as a layperson, if you're interested in like new tinnitus treatments that are being developed or are coming to the market, how can you sort of assess the quality of those studies? Because especially if you just look at the way treatments are marketed, it can be very misleading, right? They may claim 80% find improvement, but then you need to ask the tough questions of what does improvement mean and how do you measure that and how were the participants selected and all of that. So I'm not going to go into the details of this slide. It was just meant as an example of, okay, I think it's useful to like educate people on how can you as a layperson become kind of a critic of tinnitus studies and evaluate them with some tools in your toolbox. My third question was, does hoping or advocating for a cure help? I think there's a difference between hoping and advocating. I think if you keep hoping that you will be cured next month or next year, it's not necessarily the most helpful and not necessarily going to help you cope. But for me, it's more about, as a community, advocating for high quality research. So more research funding, more meaningful research that really directly meets the needs of patients, which is not, I mean, it's the stereotypical, ivory tower story where academics sometimes get caught up in their own topics, but it's not always informed by what the patient community needs. So what we're really trying to do is more direct patient involvement in research. And we've worked already on different research projects together with researchers. For instance, last year we did an evaluation of biobanks around the world and seeing what tinnitus data they have. And we're going to publish a paper on that to encourage researchers to use that existing data on tinnitus, which is really big data, and big data is very much lacking for tinnitus in general, to use that for cure-focused research. So this is just one example of like a project where we worked with a group of researchers from the beginning. So it was really designing the study from the beginning and working on it together through all the phases of the research, which is kind of the ideal form of involving patients in research. But a lot of the times what we still see is that, researchers will only reach out after they've concluded their research and then they want to talk about it. But by that time, of course, it's not really involving tinnitus sufferers or patients in the research. It's more like disseminating or discussing the outcomes, which is also useful. But so what we're really trying to stimulate is involving the community from the beginning, from the early phases of your research. And we're seeing some advancement on that, but I think tinnitus research is lagging behind a little bit compared to some other fields of research that are more advanced in involving patients actively in the research. So finally, what can you do to sort of to either help yourself or help others or help further research? I think there's a bunch of things you can do. You can help me answer that second question that I asked on like what kind of educational self-help resources or information could we develop that you think could help many people who are struggling with tinnitus. You can take part in our data collection efforts by answering surveys, which is a way of contributing to advancement in research. I mean, of course, you can take part more actively in research projects through focus group discussions and things like that. You could even volunteer for us doing data analysis or content creation or social media outreach. And of course, you can support our efforts through a donation. We're a very small nonprofit run by volunteers, so we have no overhead. It all goes directly to our projects. So keeping the Tinnitus Talk forum up and running, doing our research projects, creating the Tinnitus Talk podcast and other educational resources. So yeah, I think in sum, I would say having a sense of community can, and we've seen does, help people, cope with their condition, get a better understanding of their condition. Also, a lot of people find it, find it a positive experience to also to help and support others. And I think this sense of community can be, taken a step further when we together work with researchers to advance research and ultimately get to a cure. And I think that's all I had to say today. You can find us, of course, on tinnitustalk.com. And happy to hear any ideas that you guys have on what we could do more or better for the patient community.